Lots of people have questions. What are the different stages? What do they do? What do they mean? All this kind of good stuff. So let's break it down really quickly right now. Stage one is a transitionary from wake to sleep. It doesn't make up very much of sleep, maybe 1-2% of the entire night. Again, it's a very transitory type of sleep. By the way, if we wake people up during stage one sleep, they will swear to you up and down that they were not asleep. Even though we can see their brain waves and they're humming along at that sleep brainwave, they think there's no universe where I was asleep. Stage two represents the majority of the night. Somewhere between 50 and 55% of the entire evening is stage two sleep. To be really fair, there's some important things that happen in stage two, but it's really kind of the pre-show for stages 3 and 4 and for REM. The couple of things that stages 2 does that's really important are it emits these things called spindles and K complexes. It's not very important that everybody knows what a spindle and a K complex are, other than to know that those are things that are healthy for sleep, that can help with memory consolidation and can help with waste removal. When we get into stages 3 and 4, or what we call deep sleep, by the way, stages 3 and 4 are called stage 3, 4, deep sleep, or delta sleep, or beauty sleep, believe it or not. So that's the stage of sleep where we see true cellular repair. In fact, this is where we see the largest amount of physical restoration. So interestingly, during stage 3, 4 is where we see the largest bolus of something called growth hormone emitted. So for folks out there who don't know what growth hormone is, if you're into longevity, growth hormone is like, the elixir of the gods, okay? It's like the thing that reverses aging and makes you look young and makes your muscles fit, but it also helps with cellular repair. It also helps with our immune function. And right now, we're all kind of making sure that our immunity is jacked up because of all the stuff that's going on with the pandemic. And so stage 3, 4 sleep turns out to be very important for us, especially during times of high stress, during times of high medical incident, things of that nature. So again, stage 3, 4 is that physical restoration, that wake up and feel great sleep. The last stage is called REM, which stands for rapid eye movement. Now, folks out there might remember there was a band from Athens, Georgia. Come on, that was my best joke. I'm working hard. I'm working hard here, guys. So I actually went to the University of Georgia, and I actually saw REM play in a few clubs up in Athens. So it was actually kind of amazing for me.
I never put that together until just now. Did they name their band after REM sleep?
They did, as a matter of fact.
Oh my goodness. I was like, I totally bombed on getting that joke. Normally I'm pretty good at it, but oh my gosh, I have just had a revelation. All right, continue with REM.
I'm happy to help out.
Yeah.
So REM sleep is that mental restoration, right? So interestingly, what we've now learned is this is where we move information from our short-term memory to our long-term memory. So what happens is our brain creates an organizational substructure, kind of like a filing cabinet, right? So you're getting data that's coming in through your eyes, through your ears, through your nose, through your mouth, and your brain's got to do something with this data because it needs to store it to then retrieve it to do things like ride a bicycle or work a computer or all these different things. So it has to create this substructure. Here's the problem. There's a tremendous amount of data that's coming in every single day. The process of actually moving the data from short-term to long-term, we call that dreaming. And that's our brain's physical representation of this data move or data transfer into more of a hard drive, if you will. Now, it's pretty interesting when you think about REM sleep and it's doing the mental restoration. But there's one other thing that's going on there that's also kind of interesting. And you become paralyzed during REM sleep. Actually, there's a whole period that's called atonia, and this is the point in the interview where I say, "Do you want to know why?" And then you say, "Yes, Dr. Breus, I'd love to know why." And I say, "So that you don't act out your dreams." So believe it or not, there are people out there who do act out their dreams. I have a patient who's got this thing called REM behavior disorder. It's very interesting. So I'm originally, as I said, from a small town outside Atlanta, Georgia called Sandy Springs, Georgia. And I'm from a hunting community. If you're a hunter, you know that if you shoot a doe and you don't kill it, you either have to slit its throat or crack its neck. It's the most humane thing to do. This guy who's a hunter woke up with his wife's head ready to crack her neck.
Oh my God.
Oh yes. You cannot make this shit up. So what's the first question you have for me?
Well, after that story,
did he kill her?
What happened? Yes, what
Exactly.
happened? Yeah.
Right. Everybody wants to know, did he kill her?
Yeah.
The good news is no lives were spared for this for the story I'm telling today. The second question I get asked most often is, are they still married? She is a patient woman. I can tell you that. We actually figured it out fairly quickly. So having REM behavior disorder, there's a well-known treatment called Klonopin. We used 0.5 milligram of clonazepam, and it silenced the behavior, kept him asleep, and it was great. But here's the interesting thing, and here's the reason that I tell the story, is in 35% of cases of REM behavior disorder, it's a precursor for Parkinson's syndrome. Right. And this guy had it. And he had it in spades. So what we had to do, it was great because before we saw any type of Parkinsonian symptomatology, we got him into neurology literally 10 years ahead of his diagnosis. And we literally changed the course of his diagnosis just by him acting out his dreams at night. And so the moral of the story here is, while the stages are important, and we'll talk about cycles in just a second, the thing to remember here is sleep is a window into our health. If your sleep is messed up, I can assure you if there's something mentally or physically going on with you. I can assure you of that, because sleep is almost the most reactive of the phases of life that we have, because you have to have very specific conditions in order for it to propagate. When we look at cycles, it's kind of interesting. People go from wake to stage 1, stage 2, stage 3, 4, back to 2, and into REM. And they have to follow that exact dance maneuver, believe it or not, in that order. If you wake up in the middle, you kind of have to start from the beginning. So this is one of the reasons why when people wake up after an hour of sleep, they're like, oh, I feel like I haven't done anything. Well, you kind of haven't, because your brain starts you all over again. The other thing to know is sleep cycles end up being somewhere between 80 and 120 minutes. So 90 seems like a good average. And the average human has 5 of these sleep cycles. So here's where it gets interesting. People always ask me all the time, hey, Michael, is 8 hours a myth? You bet it is. The math doesn't even work on this, right? So if you have a 90-minute cycle and people have 5 of those, 5 times 90 is 450 minutes, which divided by 60 is 7.5 hours. So at the end of the whole thing, there's no universe where every single person on earth needs 8 hours of sleep. It just doesn't work that way.
Right. And have you ever, just coming back to that atonia for a moment, have you ever had patients who have woken up paralyzed? Because I can tell you that as you were saying that's happened to me not often, but once or twice, where I've woken up and I'm like, I can't, I'm awake, but I can't move.
It's called sleep paralysis. We used to think that when people did that, they were crazy. Now we don't any longer. So the good news is you're not crazy. It's that REM atonia.
Depends on who you ask, but
that's fair enough. We may have to go into some personal questions in a minute. But here's the interesting thing is that REM atonia seems to be left over. So what ends up happening is people are jarred awake, or they've been asleep due to alcohol or another substance that's really put them out. And something is like, bam, and then all of a sudden they wake up and then they're literally frozen, like they can't move a muscle. The interesting thing is a lot of people tell me they think they woke up dead. So they think so what they think is my body died, but my brain just hasn't gone yet. And I've only got a few seconds left. I mean, it sounds pretty terrifying if you think about it. Here's the good news. This is a very common situation, almost exclusively due to sleep deprivation. So the more sleepy you are, the greater likelihood it is to have one of these events. Interestingly, it is a hallmark symptom of something called narcolepsy. There is a brain disorder called narcolepsy where people fall asleep a lot. It's called the narcolepsy triad. There are 3 different symptoms that are kind of interesting. Sleep paralysis, what we're discussing, is one of them. The other one is hypnagogic hallucination. So seeing something just as you're falling asleep or just as you're waking up, or something called cataplexy. Cataplexy is where you have a series of expressed emotion like anger or surprise, and then you become atonic. So, if you tell a joke to a narcoleptic, they could literally fall to the ground because their muscles would stop. And that's one of the sad things, that almost all of my narcoleptic patients stopped laughing. Like, think about that for a second. Yeah. Like, what if you had to stop laughing because your body couldn't handle it? Like, how sad of an existence would that be? So there's a lot of interesting areas when we look at that. But yes, sleep paralysis is certainly something that's fairly well known, and a lot of people freak out about it.